All right, so what is the MRRA? The Minnesota Rehabilitation and Reinvestment Act went into effect August 1st of this year. This law says that people in prison can earn 25% off of their sentences by an individualized plan. Those plans must be in place by January 2025 for those released after January 1st, 2026. Supervision reductions will be earned up to 33%, which is 1 month off for every 2 that are in compliance. Savings will be reinvested, 25% to victims, county, DOC, and the general fund. Lifers do not qualify, but everyone else does. On paper, this is a good framework for moving forward and investing in the actual rehabilitation of incarcerated people. And yet, there's a lot to be desired and much more work to be done. We applaud Commissioner Schnell and the Department of Corrections for pushing this through. However, the DOC has circulated a memo informing prisoners that these programs won't be implemented until January 2025, despite starting a successful 2-year pilot on the program in 2021. Individualized plans started to be developed 2 years ago. So what does this mean? This means that 1,300 people could lose out on their good time. 6,700 potential new voters on supervision could also lose that time. We emphasize that these will be new voters because of the recently passed Voters Restoration Law that now gives people who completed their sentences and parolees the opportunity to vote. Those folks will miss out on voting in the 2024 presidential election. Plans will be individual. There's no uniform standard. Work release can be built into these plans, but the length of work release opportunity won't be expanded. This initiative will save money from $4,600 a person to $150 million a year. However, the DOC still doesn't know how to register sentence changes with the courts. They have to go through a process consulting 11 groups and get community input. And then 38 states have already implemented similar early release programs. So this is a monumental undertaking for all involved. What we're here to do today is to contextualize this alongside people who are directly impacted by these systems and policies. So today we're going to hear from 2 family advocates of Minnesota prisoners as we discuss how the MRRA, as well as other opportunities for early release, have worked in practice, and why it's imperative to push for a public timeline, transparency, and continued meetings with the DOC as this moves forward. In IWOC, as well as with most progressive spaces in Minnesota, we like to think that prisoners should not face a lifetime of punishment for no reason, and that prisons are supposed to be places where growth, accountability, and restoration are the standard. By centering the voices of people inside, we can create a better roadmap to better accommodate that vision. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Christina, our first panelist. Let me go ahead and unmute. You can go ahead and unmute yourself, I believe.
Hi guys, I'm Christina. Thanks so much for joining us today. And then thank you, Steph, for going over that and just kind of explaining what the MRRA is all about today and why this conversation that we're going to have today is so important. Trina, do you want to go ahead and tell me a little bit about yourself and the person that you are representing today? Oh, you're on mute. I think we have to take her off.
I think you should be able to unmute yourself, but let me see if I can do it.
All right, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you now.
All righty, good morning, everyone. My name is Trina Murray, formerly known as Latrina Elaine Hodges. I'm a former corrections officer for the state of Minnesota, as well as for the state of Georgia. My son is the person that I'm representing today. His name is David Lawrence Hodges, and he is an inmate at Moose Lake Correctional Facility. My son has been incarcerated approximately 16 years. The reason why MRRA is important. Why? Because my son first has children who haven't had their father, and it's had a detrimental effect on them. And One of the things that me and my son talk about is how we don't want history to repeat itself. And the Department of Correction is no place to have a family reunion or share memories about as far as being inmates, because it's nothing joyful. Um, his kids miss him dearly, but my son takes ownership for the crimes that he committed that landed him in prison. One of the proudest moments that I had for my son was when he told me that, Mom, I'm turning myself in. He didn't run, he didn't hide. Um, he did have avenues to escape to, but he said, no, I have children and it's time for me to man up and show them the right way to deal with, something that is turmoil in your life that you don't want to face, but you have to show accountability. Showing accountability isn't just stepping up and saying, hey, I committed a crime. My son acknowledges the victims of his crime. And that was huge for me too, because I am a survivor of sexual assault. And, his thing was, when you have an ailment, whether it's physical or mental, you need to deal with it. You need to get help for it. And it needs to be done. And you need to own it and identify what it is and get to the core root. My son, one thing he's been doing that makes me really proud, a couple things. Every course, every training, every counseling, every program, whether it's clinical or it's psychological, dealing with what you're going to do and having a plan when you leave incarceration. His thing is, he wasn't gonna let time do him. He was going to do his time and make it effective. He then began to go to the law library. And also, he basically said, let me take a proactive approach and basically get corrected. It's like, get the healing that I needed. And also change this lifestyle. I need to set a good example for my children. And that's what he's doing. David's taken every course, and I have all his certificates to prove it. The very programs, a lot of which the Commissioner of Corrections is asking or saying that is his justification on why the MRRA, the component of the early release, is being delayed, is because he wants to make sure that the people who this affects directly have the necessary training and therapy and etc. before coming out here into society. Well, my son, as well as other inmates, especially the long timers, that's exactly what they've already been doing. And one thing that struck me as kind of ill is that the department, the case managers are no longer putting the certificates of completion in the inmate's file. So therefore, a lot of them can't show or have evidence that they've already completed the necessary prerequisites of getting out early, according to the commissioner. Excuse me, I have to turn this alarm clock off. It's about to get very loud. Okay.
So it sounds like your son was, he took a proactive approach to owning up for his, taking responsibility for his actions, and he turned himself in, and he wanted to set a good example for his children, and he wanted to get the time over with to just bear that responsibility. And your son has been incarcerated for 16 years.
Yeah.
And in that time, he's taking several approaches, and it sounds like almost every opportunity that's been presented to him to gain certificates in learning and growing and learning about life and rehabilitation.
Yes.
And now we run into this MRRA where he's eligible for early release.
Right.
The
Absolutely.
MRRA went into effect August 1st.
Right.
However, we still need to implement it. The state of
Exactly.
Minnesota. And if the state of Minnesota implements the MRRA, not only is he eligible, he's ready, he's served his time, he's done everything, you know, within his reach to better himself, not just inside, but outside in the community, he's ready to go.
Absolutely, because my son, not only has he taken all the courses, which I can read a few off to you and show you the evidence, but he already has employment lined up through a law firm. He already has housing set up with Matthew Emerson. Also, he has therapy set up. He has a support system set up. He also is obtaining his CDL license as a second method to earn income. But so he's already mentoring inside of the prison for younger inmates, so they don't have to continue to go through the route that he went through.
Yeah.
And he steers them from trouble, but he also plans to continue with that, his advocacy work, and he just wants to make a change for his community, and he wants to be a visible, tangible um, example that you can change if you want to. And some of the things he's done is he, in 2014, anger management, part 1 and 2, certificate of completion is hereby recognized for quality of work and participation and success from Inside Out series, life skills, communications, and interpersonal relationships is awarded to this certificate, September 2014. Oh, Lord. Same thing, employment, life skills, success. Let's see. How to deal with stress management, anger management, 1 and 2 in recognition, July 2014. He's gone through every year that he's been in incarceration. He has certificates, and there's so many of them, but how to basically, see,
Utilize them and get the most out of them. So it sounds like he's done a lot. And I love to hear that he's doing advocacy, that he's being, you know, a role model for those in there. And it sounds like, you know, because he's done so much positive stuff, he can show them how to take a positive and proactive approach in there. So it sounds like he's really taking ownership of everything that he's learned. And he's ready to, you know, to be released and, you know, go back in his community, and he has a lot to show for it. So if the law is not implemented in a reasonable amount of time, as it should be, I think we all agree that, you know, they've had plenty of time to implement this. I think longer than even some of us were initially aware of. If this law if it's not implemented, how will your son be impacted by everything he's done to get ready and then being held back?
It's like someone dangling a piece of cheese in front of a starving person. And then right when they get up to being able to grasp the cheese, they snatch it away from them and then slam the door and let you deal with your own emotions. But you're starving. And what you need is right outside that door. And they have the necessary means to implement this, or should have. They've had plenty enough time to do this.
Yes.
And emotionally, you know, people don't realize the suicide rate in prison is really high. And this is playing with somebody's emotions. It's like if they weren't going to implement it right away, then they should have said that a long time ago. And inmates basically sent me a statement, and it just basically says that, you know, they're doing, some people are really owning the fact that they needed to do what they needed to do to get out, to earn the good time, and they've done it. And when you've done the work, but then the reward that was not promised, but you're entertained with, or thought that was possible. It's you say, oh, we're not going to implement this for like 18 months to 2 years. That's not fair. And these are still human beings. If
Yes, yep.
people have served their time and repaid their debt to society and ready to come out and be members of society in a positive way by getting their education, obtaining a job or a career, or starting a business, being home with their families so history doesn't repeat itself. It's saving taxpayers money because it costs far too much to house, feed, and supply medical and, you know, mental health for inmates when they could be out here being productive members of society, the ones that are ready. Not everybody's ready, but the majority of these guys, they're ready to come home. And why not? You know, we can't just keep punishing people when they've served their time. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
No, I agree. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing, Trina. And real quick, what was your son's name again?
David Lawrence Hodges.
Okay, David
Oh,
Hodges.
and one more thing I was told. They said, the inmates, they said that if politicians and even the DLC have an issue with the as far as public safety, or in being accountable for the whereabouts of people when they first get out, they're open to ankle monitoring, you know? And these are inmates, they're just being realistic. What's going to make you feel more comfortable with letting us out? We've done the work. A lot of them have, and some of them have the evidence to support that. And if they've done their time and they've earned a good time, let them out.
Absolutely. And it sounds like David has. It sounds like he's just been a model throughout each step of this, even prior to his incarceration, with turning
Exactly.
himself in, and then helping others too. And if anything, if that's any consolation, at least we know, right now, while some of this is, pending in the implementation process, that, your son, hopefully he doesn't become too overcome by being discouraged. Just with all the help that he's doing and the advocacy work that he's doing. So if anything, there's a bright lining or a positive note to this, I would think it's that. Real quick, Trina, before we jump over to the other part of, these questions in this interview with Tracy, who's also here, is there a message that you'd like to share with the MRRA law coming into effect or coming into implementation that you'd like to share with the general public? Or do you have a request or a shout out that you'd like to make to DOC Minnesota Commissioner Paul Schnell in regards to this?
I'm a firm believer in second chances. I had a second chance and I got arrested once in my life. And I was young, I was like 19. And it just took that one time. And I changed my whole life around and I became a corrections officer. So it is possible. People can change. It has to be an inner desire to change, but it is possible. And I just want to say that you still have to treat people, whether they have been found guilty of a crime or not, with dignity and respect as human beings. And keeping people locked up longer than they need to be is inhumane. And it's not making society any better, it's making it worse. Studies show that when the longer that people are incarcerated, there are chances that they pick up how to be a better criminal than to get, rehabilitated. And I think that's the core thing. You got to look at a person, what they're missing in life and what they've been through, and learn how to correct that, the negative part of that. And a lot of these guys, especially when they've been locked up for a long time. It's like they didn't get that. So if we want to stop with all this revolving door, at least lessen the numbers substantially, then we got to get to the core group. People need education. They need mental health therapy. They need jobs, real jobs where they can pay their bills and have a sense of pride about themselves. So they're not out here committing crimes just to pay the rent. Or if they got a drug problem, deal with that drug problem and rehabilitate that person so we can stop taking care of people behind the walls and get them out here functioning. And that's what needs to be happening.
Yes, I agree. So more programs accessible to those. So incarceration doesn't have to just be a detriment, not only to the individuals who are incarcerated, but to society in something dark in that degree, but incarcerating being a chance for growth to take place and having programs and having people taken care of because they're human beings. They're not simply, inmates. They're human beings.
Yes. And everybody, I don't care what walk of life you come from, know someone who is incarcerated or who has been incarcerated. And, whether it's a family member, acquaintance, or a friend, we know somebody. And that, they're still people. And once we get to a point where we don't see people first and we just see, we just shame these people and brand them as if they deserve punishment for a lifetime. Sometimes people make huge mistakes. We all do. Some of us get caught for them and some of us didn't, but the ones that got caught, they went in front of a judge and jury and they were sentenced and convicted. And if you do your time and you follow the rules and you've made efforts to correct that negative behavior with positive training, therapy, and doing your time as a model prisoner, then, what other obligation do they have to fulfill?
Right. What more do we need to do to help people, basically,
Right.
to help them grow? If you serve your time and do everything possible to make a negative situation positive, you should be able to move on with your life, and you should be supported by your community and judges and all those who are involved in the justice and the criminal system. So thank you so much, Trina. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for everyone that showed up for the Zoom, whether you're the press or an advocate or a community member. It takes all of us. This isn't just my problem, your problem. It's all of our problem because it's all our society. We're all a part of society. And whether you want to realize it or not, some people are getting out of prison with or without this. And we have to heal what's wrong with our society and what the people in our society and communities. If they're sick, then we all have an issue and we have to help them get well.
Yes, I agree. Yes, thank you, Trina.
Thank you, Trina.
Stephanie.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Trina, we hope you can stay for questions. We want to save questions for the end. But for now, we're going to pivot to our next panelist. Panelist is Tracy. Tracy has an incarcerated loved one in Stillwater. Are you with us, Tracy? Can you hear?
Yep. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you perfectly. Thanks for joining us and being willing to share. Can you share us who your loved one is and what facilities you have experience dealing with together?
Sure. So I'm Tracy Karlovich. He's James Edward Jordan. He is in Stillwater, Minnesota, DOC right now. And we were in Faribault before that. So he went from medium to minimum.
Got
He's
it.
only
And then
been in Stillwater about a
how
month.
long? About how long at these facilities?
So in Faribault, he spent 18 months, and in Stillwater now we've just been about a month.
Got it. And then how did your relative, or how did he hear about the MRRA and what was his reaction? Did he tell you about it?
So we were dealing with him not being eligible for any programming for 17 or 18 months. And throughout that, then somebody had let him know about the program, the MRRA. You know, he had heard it from within this facility when he was struggling so much with the program hold that he had on him.
Got it. What was the program hold all about?
So when you first, I mean, everybody goes through an assessment when you enter prison, and they gave him a treatment recommendation in a program block, but James has no drug history or drug related crimes whatsoever. So the treatment recommendation is something that he appealed right away. But they denied that as well. And so then what happens is they wait to put him through treatment, and until you get to go through treatment, you can't do any other programming, period. So you're not eligible for any of the programs until you have that treatment taken care of. Well, Faribault is 2,200 people with 12 beds in the treatment. Like 80% of people get a treatment recommendation. So everybody is waiting for treatment. So he sat for 18 months with no programming whatsoever.
Wow. So you're saying most people have this type of treatment like hold in Faribault, and then there's just 12 beds for all of those people.
Yeah. I mean, it's yeah. So he went through an appeal process, asking, the grounds of why he has this treatment recommendation. Again, he has no drug related crimes, no drug related history. So why the treatment hold in the first place? And he started questioning the data then behind that. We used the Data Act, and he started questioning the data behind it. And as we put more and more pressure on them to give us an answer as to why they had the treatment recommendation for him, they removed the hold. So
They just removed it like that?
right, it was like admitting that there was no reason for it. I mean, they just removed it. And so now, although we'd wasted 18 months, we were still extremely happy to be able to move on from there.
Right. Wow. Can you talk about just the rest of the process, like how you all, what else you went through with the appeals process, where he's at now with the treatment issue?
Sure. So he, they give you a certain amount of time to appeal something. So he did that, and they denied it. And so then we sat a really long time after that with you can't even go to parenting or fathering or anything while you're waiting for this treatment to take place.
Mm.
So he missed out on the work release program and the CIP program. And these are the things, it does something to somebody to have to do a prison sentence, right? So that's a lot all on its own. But then some people, just like Trina said, there's situations where people choose life over over prison. So he is committed to changing life, to doing something different, but he needs help. He hasn't done this before. So
Mhm.
So he puts in his time. He's willing. He's like a poster child for a successful story to be. This is his time to make that happen. And so being denied all of the programming or the restrictions put on him, or the way that they've lost his latest appeal, they've lost it now. They said he's never appealed before. So he has to start all over. So
Wow.
it's been really frustrating with he has I mean, he has the receipts that say that they charged him for the postage to send the appeal in. They take photocopies of every single kite. That's what they use as, communication within the prison. So he writes kites, and they take photocopies of them and they return them and they say, received and things like that. And James keeps every single thing in the world.
Mhm.
And he has them all organized, and he has the receipt that says he sent the appeal in, and it's frustrating to then have them say he never did it. He's never appealed. So now he's right back at square one, and still the work release program's not within his reach then because of it, and things like that. I mean, they use another system called MinStar that has posed us a lot of problems as well.
Can you tell us what MinStar is? There might be folks on the call who don't know, and how that affected their decision.
Sure. I mean, I think it's probably it's one of the point systems that the Department of Corrections uses to decide whether or not you are eligible for programming. What I've learned myself is that was created by one human being that is in control of the entire system. So he created this stats way of deciding where you are on the point system. So it goes off of your past history, criminal history, if any of it's violent, if any of it's sexual, and age. And then you get a level, whether you're very high or you're high. And this is what allows you into programs like the work release program. So after 19 months, obviously, James has talked to quite a few people in there, right? He's in there with a lifelong person that has child molestation and rape and has a very low MinStar. So he's, that's where he rates. Whereas James has never been to prison prior to this. And even getting there, I mean, they were looking for something they didn't find, and he's here now, but he's living it, and he's changing what he needs to. And he's got a very high MinStar. It makes him absolutely not eligible for any of it. He can't do any programming. So he'll have done his start to finish prison sentence with no rehabilitation whatsoever.
Is there a way to change that information, or the data, or the MinStar score, or anything like that?
Well, so all of it has, the data is a government act that started, years ago. But I mean, the Public Data Act is something that you can appeal and change it. And he has requested to have that changed many, many times, and it's been ignored. And as if he has never asked to have the appeal done. The MinStar, they say that things like support and programming and can lower it, but nobody's ever seen a score lowered before. I mean, he was given his score before he was even charged with the crimes that he accepted as the charges. I mean, so when they had a score for him before he was ever charged, they were trying to give him 19 charges. So that's when they gave him a score. Well, he took 4 charges. I mean, that's a really big difference, but the score didn't change at all then. So, I mean, before he was even charged, he had a score. It just doesn't, when you ask about it, it doesn't, it's ignored, and nobody's ever seen one really lowered.
Wow. I just want to thank you for sharing again. That sounds overly complicated and frustratingly bureaucratic. I can imagine it takes a toll on your well-being. Can I ask, just as a wrap up, what type of opportunities, or has he talked about maybe what he would be interested in work-wise or opportunity-wise when he does get out, and what types of opportunities he would take advantage of? You mentioned challenging incarceration programs. Is there any other programs that he's done already or looking to get into, or
so the work
release
is his big thing, and he's really willing to learn anything. on his own, though. I mean, so he's not going to let this stop him. I mean, he can affect a lot of people, especially in his community. He is a pillar of his community, and for him to succeed can inspire so many people. I mean, he has a real story, and he's gonna make it so that he does it right. But so he has plans on his own, since he hasn't gotten any of the support or the rehabilitation, same as Trina was saying about the caseworkers. His caseworker is really who he should be using. I mean, they're the ones that should be applying them for the programs and letting them know what's available. But I mean, I try talking to his caseworker, and they don't even know any of the programs that are available. They certainly aren't helpful on it. So James has a business plan all on his own. He's got funding lined up, and he's going to put it right in his community, and he's going to break bread with his community. It'll provide us, it's something that's gonna, I mean, if there's ever going to be a story of somebody changing their life around, it'll be him. So it's tough. We're lucky that he didn't lose his hope from this battle, because it's really hard to see what the goal of prison is. I mean, it's obviously just the punishment. I mean, once you complete your punishment, though, you are supposed to be able to move on from that. You know, you don't make a deal and then still be mad that you accepted the deal. You know, you make a deal and you allow them to recover, and you allow them to be people again. It doesn't seem like that. It's hard to see what their goal is, what they want from people. You know, it's hard to see what makes them successful.
For sure. Thank you so much for sharing. I know this is just
Sorry.
really serious. No, that's okay. This is a really serious topic, and it's really close to a lot of our hearts. So I just appreciate you sharing that. Christina's going to talk about what we're asking for, and then we'll get into opportunity for you all to ask questions. Christina, I think you're still on mute. Sorry.
Okay, sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, so we have some requests that we'd like to make to the Minnesota DOC. And this is part of the implementation process, and a barrier that we've encountered with our communication with the DOC, but we'd like them to publish the Minnesota Rehabilitation Act by September of this year. We would also like to give supervised release to 6,700 qualifying inmates and reduce the caseloads of parole officers by Thanksgiving of this year. We'd also like to give prison time reduction to 1,300 qualifying inmates who could be released before January 1st of 2025. This also happens to be Black History Month. And we would like to make work release programs like the Minnesota Rehabilitation Act more accessible to inmates. So kind of like what Trina experienced with her son, David, where he's done everything, and the program, it's in effect, it's legal, it just needs to be implemented. Therefore, it makes it not accessible. And we'd like more programs like that. In addition to that, we would like to expand the Minnesota work release program, so those who do not currently qualify will qualify in the future. So more people can be proactive and know that there's programs, there's outlets, there's ways of growth, and it's not a shut door. You know, like David, Trina's son, he's done everything, and we have these programs, but it's a shut door. So we want to open that door. We want more programs in place. We want that. We want to publish the Minnesota Rehabilitation Act so that the public can view it, so we can view it. So groups like the Incarcerated Workers Organizing Community, other groups and people who are affected by those, who are incarcerated, family, loved ones, can be involved, and we can open up a door for communication with this particular issue with the MRRA today. So those are the requests that we'd like to make to the DOC. We're also opening up the door for communication to hear back from Minnesota DOC. Paul Schnell, we'd love to hear back from you. And with our requests that we're making today, it'd be great to get some sort of response so we know that our message is heard. So thank you so much for joining us. That's all I have to say. Stephanie, did you want to close it up with anything else outside of asking those who are in attendance if they have any questions?
Yeah, we just want to emphasize that the MRRA has already been passed and implemented. It's just a matter of as the public, we need to see the policies, the nitty gritty, the details of how it's going to work. That needs to be made publicized. So that's what we're asking for by December. So I'm going to pass it to any press people first. If you have any questions for our panelists or ourselves, you can go ahead and unmute or raise your hand or type in the chat, and I'll go ahead and direct to you all right now.
If nobody has any questions, did anybody have a statement that they would like to make, or a request to the DOC or to Commissioner Paul Schnell?
I'd like to make a plea to Commissioner Smell. This is Trina Murray speaking, and I just basically feel that he has a responsibility as the helm of the DOC to do what's right and to basically honor what the law is. I don't believe that one person should have or does have the power to say yay or nay. I believe that once our government officials and our legislative, body made their decision and granted this bill into law, he should honor it. And I think that it's important to remember that this is the DOC, the Department of Corrections, and the MRRA would be a great way for them to basically mirror what they're supposed to be doing, what their core philosophy and mission statement should be. And that is to basically rehabilitate people and get them back into society with a positive support plan. Plain and simple, in the most efficient and expedited way as possible. This needs to happen now. There's no reason. You can't give me a reason, or you haven't given me a reason basically that makes sense. One, why you won't talk to us as a community and the press and the society, the citizens of the state of Minnesota. You have been instructed that this is the law. We need you to implement it now, and at least go forward with the people that already have completed and done what they needed to do, and you need to expedite the ones to follow them. Get people in those programs, not just say, oh, you need to basically conduct or complete A, B, C, and D, if you're not giving them the opportunity to implement and get the training of A, B, C, and D. So I need you to do that. And I need Governor Walz to basically, if the commissioner doesn't do what he needs to do as far as the law is concerned, the governor has then the responsibility to supersede the commissioner and do his job and make sure that the law is implemented in a timely and an effective way. And that's what I got to say.
Thank you, Trina. I appreciate that. Yeah, the people of your community speaking out to those who, who have positions where, they have the power to do something. So these are the people of the community speaking out to Governor Paul Schnell and the Minnesota Department of Correction Commissioner Paul Schnell.
I have something I would say too. I think that the minds of 1,300 people that have the ability to be released before they're going to be allowed, I mean, that causes worry as to what's going to happen to those 1,300 people that are sitting there knowing that they could be released and they're not. I mean, once they are released, that causes safety issues to me. I mean, that would make anybody infuriated. I mean, how can we possibly just tell them that the opportunity isn't there, even though the law is already passed? I mean, that's a lot of people that we already know are capable of committing crimes, and now we're going to keep them there unnecessarily. I can't imagine what that would do to them.
And that's a good point, Stephanie, because as a former corrections officer, when you speak about safety, it's not just safety of that particular inmate or the inmates that are affected, it's also the whole institution, including the safety of the officers and staff that work there, because you create this tension and anxiety, and people who are in prison, their anxiety and their tension is a lot different from what we experience out here. And you're putting people at risk unnecessarily, and that includes the officers. Something like this is enough to make an inmate go off or, have anxiety or just lose it kind of, because they've been locked up for so long, and here you're dangling freedom in their face, and then you want to take it away and say, oh, you gotta wait. And then you gotta complete A, B, C, and D. And oh, that's not available to everybody right now. That's not cool. You've had 2 years to get this stuff in order. You've had pilot programs, you keep asking for additional money to run DOC. What are you doing with the money that you're already obtaining, that you're supposed to be having these services already in place, giving people rehabilitative, corrective skills, training, and therapy? If you're not doing that with this amount of money, then how can you keep asking for more money? Let's stop spending money on things that don't work. Let's try something new. And change is hard, change is different, but we need to try something else, because what we're doing right now is not working. So I need Paul Snell to come back to the table like an adult and talk to us, because he's in a position where he agreed to take that job, and this is part of it. And Governor Walz, we need you to do the same thing. Okay, you're the governor for everybody, not just some people. And just because the election is coming, that's not a good excuse on pushing this back until after the election is over. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to get to some upcoming events, but does anybody else have anything to add or any other questions?
My name is Tashira Garraway. I'm the founder of an organization called Family Supporting Families Against Police Violence. And I was talking to Stephanie yesterday, and we talked about how whether someone is incarcerated on the street or incarcerated or killed on the street here in Minnesota, the point is that there's a certain group of people strategically put under oppression, and it's kind of seeming at this point that it's meant to stay this way. My statement, I want to make this brief, to Paul Schnell is one of my sisters here on this call, I believe, Trina, stated, come back to the table as an adult. I'm asking Governor Tim Walz and Paul Schnell to come back to the table as human beings, to come back to the table as if everyone matters, like I believe in my heart that hopefully they believe. To understand that there are people that could be free in our community, given a fair chance, understanding that people have made mistakes as they have too, and asking them to dig in their hearts and find a way to see us all as human beings and that people deserve a fair chance. That's what I'm asking for. It's not about going against law enforcement. It's not about going against anything at all, honestly. But it's about equality, and it's about treating human beings as human beings. That's what I want to say.
Thank you so much, Toshira. We're going to close it out with a couple of events we have coming up. First off, there's a next rally at the governor's mansion. Sorry, give that 1 second. There is a next rally at the governor's mansion on September 16th at 11 a.m. So come join us for that. We're going to continue hosting Home for Good hangouts. We did one this Monday. There was a group of folks from around the state. We all convened on Zoom and talked about this issue. So we're going to continue hosting those through the rest of the year. So follow us on social media for those dates. IWOC specifically is having a fundraiser Saturday, September 9th at St. Mary's Episcopal Church in St. Paul. I want to say a quick word about who we are. Twin Cities Incarcerated Workers Organizing Committee. We're a union of prisoners, ex-prisoners, families, and communities working to transform the justice system. And the Home for Good Coalition was formed to push for the expansion of early education and work release programs for Minnesota prisoners. Lastly, some of our partners have events coming up. Toshira just mentioned there is a rally Sunday and a march to the Capitol, Justice for All, Stolen Lives. That's going to start at the St. Paul Police Station and march to the Capitol. So you can follow Families Supporting Families of Police Brutality, against police violence. You can follow them on social. And then Minneapolis Speaks is a community event just with some back to school giveaways, resources, entertainment, food, networking. That is Saturday, August 26th, which is next Saturday, from 1 to 6, 1101 West Broadway. With that, I think I want to thank all of our panelists and facilitator. Thank you so much, Christina, for helping. If anybody else, did Heidi want to say something too? If you had your hand up, Heidi, you can go ahead.
Well, thank you. Yeah, we're going to close out, and I just wanted to really recognize my name is Heidi Romanish, and I have my loved one incarcerated in Faribault. So definitely thank you, Trina and Tracy, for sharing your stories. And I am going to put a link in the chat. My loved one has been impacted by the intersection of immigration policy and law, and how that impacts